I'm Kerry Bowers, and I approve this message.
Greetings. The matter of homosexuality is an issue I have chosen to address from the outset of my campaign because of the nation's focus on the subject and the responsibility I believe that national leadership has to address this issue and protect innocent, lawful Americans cruelly chastised and or denied their rights for reasons not of their own choosing. This is a subject that I had to confront early in my adult life when those close to me courageously admitted their homosexuality. These revelations were difficult for me, and I tried to find reasons for such persuasion. But understanding was not to come to me through my own reasoning. It may come as a surprise to some, but frankly, it was my belief in God and His creations that brought me to my most trusted understanding and acceptance of those things which I least understand, homosexuality included among them. God gives me His answer to my lack of answers in the book of Proverbs, chapter 3, verse 5, which reads in part, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding." As a Christian, I believe that a child, every child, is a gift of God. Sometimes the acts that create a child are not of God's will, and yet the child is a work of God, made possible through the creation God has designed, by which children are conceived, gestate in the womb of a woman, and then born into a sinful world. What I struggle with in my human reasoning is why children are born different from my expectations for creations of God. They are born of different sizes, shapes, and colors. They can have varying numbers and symmetries of limbs and digits, and in the worst case, be so malformed that they cannot survive outside the womb. They can be highly intellectual, and in other cases, be born with challenging mental capacities. They may be outwardly male, female, or have the organs of both sexes on or inside one body. They may be of heterosexual persuasion, and yes, homosexual, to the extent defined by man based on the presence of the most obvious physical characteristics, typically a particular sex organ. If I can believe all the many accepted variations of humans are the works of God, then why should I consider it any less probable that God also created what man has termed homosexual based on a sex organ and not the entirety of a man or woman's physiology and psychology? Do not get me wrong, as it is not my intent to imply that homosexuality is a human deformity, but instead another of the many varieties of human beings God brings into His world for His reasons, and to which He has told us to love one another and lean not on our own understandings. The Bible, while giving me profound answers in one respect, also adds some confusion to a man confined to the reasoning assigned man by the Creator. At least a dozen verses in the Bible allude to what may be described as homosexual behavior, and not in a positive context as I or you would likely interpret it. However, most of the verses appear to put it in the context of deviancy from the behavior expected of the subject gender. Could it be then the focus is actually on those who are of heterosexual persuasion and engage in deviant behavior by choice, as opposed to the love that exists between people whom God has made what we term homosexual and not acting contrary to their God-given physiological and psychological being? Whatever the case may be, whether I be right or wrong in my reasoning, my direction from God is to love every human being and refrain from judging lest I be judged. Let me add at this point too, I do not concur with the labeling of homosexuals with terms that I believe were created to be derogatory, even though they may be used by those born of such sexual persuasion to which it has been applied. They are terms that parallel others in the history of our nation to inappropriately describe people different from ourselves. Therefore, they serve only to divide us and place us as a people below the standards created for our nation, standards we are responsible to uphold. In this same regard, I do not concur with the parading and celebrating of either homosexuality or heterosexuality, because such behavior is not beneficial to the respect and dignity due every human being regardless of their sexual persuasion. I do not want, and I suspect many, if not most Americans, do not want a person flaunting their sexual persuasion in front of them or their children. Such behavior, in my opinion, projects deviancy and not the intended course of humanity created by God, which is to be revered by all people. Having now addressed my opinion on the subject of homosexuality, I must bring that into perspective with the two major corresponding issues of the day, which are marriage among homosexuals and the admission and/or continuation of professed homosexuals in our military. I will first address marriage among homosexuals. Marriage, as I view it from my biblical perspective, is an institution between a man and a woman created by God. Such institution can exist without the issuance of a marriage license in the spiritual bond that marriage creates between husband, wife, and God. Marriage licenses are of a human creation, which bind and protect individuals for earthly reasons. Many times, the marriages for which licenses are granted are executed before a magistrate or other non-religious officiate, and for couples who do not even acknowledge the existence of God. From a religious perspective, it is as hard or harder for me today to identify with a heterosexual marriage void of God as it is a marriage between homosexuals whom both love the same God I have come to love. Therefore, separating that which God hath made from that which is created by man, I support a union certificate that will extend to any couple the same rights, privileges, and legal obligations made possible through what we now recognize as a marriage license. Whether such union shall become an institution of marriage recognized by God will be left to God alone. I'll further add, any union of a couple in one state should be recognized as a union by all states, thus removing any obstacles such union may create in the movement of couples between states and to comply with Article 4 of the U.S. Constitution. I feel it is important to say, too, any person refusing to officiate a union or marriage ceremony, or any business or facility refusing to accommodate such ceremonies, should not be held liable for such refusal. Because of the religious disagreements that will exist on this issue and the respect I have for such disagreement, I do not want any person put into a position in which they may act contrary to their beliefs. There will be many other options for an officiate and many other businesses and places that will welcome a union or marriage ceremony and provide what I hope would be the atmosphere conducive to a joyous occasion. Turning to the matter of homosexuals in the military, I do not believe the issue is whether they can serve equally as well as their counterparts, which they have done and continue to do, but can we offer them the same respect, benefits, and privileges as is provided to heterosexuals and their dependents. As Commander-in-Chief of the military, it will be my position that no one has to declare their sexual persuasion. It will also be my position that those persons who have a union or other similar document issued by a state in recognition of their union will receive all the benefits and privileges previously reserved to heterosexual couples. I believe that to do otherwise would be an injustice and constitutionally prohibitive. The admission of homosexual couples into the military and the communities of our military families will not, in my opinion, be any more distracting than what is already prevalent among the same quality of dedicated professionals in the civilian sector today. I anticipate that heterosexuals will continue to dominate our military, and, that being so, the majority of domestic and professional problems of a sexual nature will continue to be dominated by heterosexual members as well. In summary, my addressing this subject, and at this time, has been done to stay on course with my declaration to be upfront and disclosing of my intentions with the American people. I want you to know as much as you can about my beliefs and the specifics of how I would set direction for this nation were I to be so blessed as to become your president and executive servant. This is an important subject that needs resolution and that otherwise is not going to just disappear to the convenience of those that may wish for it to do so. By taking a position based on what is appropriate constitutionally, we may remove from the public some sentiments, though I pray for all, that persist as an obstacle to living in harmony with all law-abiding, patriotic, and prayerfully God-loving citizens. I greatly appreciate your time and attention to this message.